Hello and welcome to Crowdfunding with Confidence. I'm Nicole, one of the coaches at Crowdfunder, and this is Sami, our head of coaching. Hello, Sami.
Hi, everyone. Hey.
So just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. We can't see you. You can see us, but we cannot see you. So don't worry about that at all. You're absolutely fine to sit and eat your lunch and do whatever you're doing. We'll be about 30 minutes, depending on whether we've got any questions or anything like that. And please do ask questions. There is a box there to the right. No one knows you, so please do ask anything you like, whether it's about crowdfunding in general, but then specifically focusing on your confidence when you're crowdfunding. So we wanted to have this kind of informal workshop because we speak to a lot of anxious project owners and people who are thinking about crowdfunding every day. So this is for anyone who, when they think about crowdfunding, their heart starts to beat a bit faster. Maybe you get that funny feeling in your stomach, you feel a little bit tense. It could just be excitement, but it could also be unease or nervousness. So, Sami, you've worked at Crowdfunder for 6 years. You must have spoken to thousands and thousands of projects. There must be some themes around this that you've heard time and time again.
I mean, yeah, definitely. It's interesting, actually. I was looking at how many projects I worked with the other day, and it is actually thousands. So, yeah, I've definitely seen different types of project owners, right the way across the spectrum of nervousness, right the way down to utter absolute confidence. So it's definitely been interesting for me to see the different ways that people react to it. I think when I crowdfunded at the start of my own business, which I did sort of 3 years ago now, I had that firsthand. So I definitely was suddenly in the shoes of people who I'd been working with for years. So I think there's definitely some key themes, and I think similarly, I think there are some techniques, some strategies of how you can sort of manage that nervousness.
Absolutely. So yeah, so I've worked at Crowdfunder for 3 months now. And definitely I've already seen that there's a few key things that come up time and time again when you're talking to project owners. So, and some things we'll come on to, like we've got some good advice that we did a bit of a brainstorm before this. We've got hopefully some good advice and some practical tips for you. So some of the main things are around breaking your project down into smaller parts. I think that's really, really key because it can feel very, very overwhelming. It's so important to somebody when they start a crowdfunding project. Often it's something people have been thinking about doing for years. Perhaps it's a business that could really change their life. Perhaps it's a community-based project which they're really passionate about. They know it's going to have a real impact when they get started. So, of course, that's going to be something that makes you really nervous and something you're worried about doing. So in those types of situations, Sami, what kind of things would you say to people?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it can feel like a bit of a gigantic mountain when you're, at the bottom of it, so to speak, when you're just starting out, that you've got all these things to do, lots of bits and pieces to bring together. So definitely breaking it down into smaller parts. And setting yourself deadlines. I find that I'm quite deadline motivated, and some people may be some less so. But setting yourself little deadlines, little wins that you can have along the way while you're setting things up and getting things going, is almost like every time you finish that bit, it feels good to tick something off the list and say, yeah, I've done this bit. If I can do this bit, I can do the next bit, and keep moving forward and keep moving forward. And I think that there is this thing around nervousness and sort of excitement, and they're so close together. They kind of touch and overlap. I know that I get it, if I'm really excited about something, but I'm also a bit nervous and anxious, that the two do sort of merge together. And I think it's interesting to maybe think about that and acknowledge it, and try to remind yourself that actually you're also pretty excited as well as nervous.
They're two sides of the same coin, aren't they? And I think sometimes our bodies get confused between one and the other. And actually, we're just so excited, but then it turns into nervousness and anxiety, which is a bit of a shame, really, isn't it? But and I think that comes back to just this idea of reaching out to other people. Like we're really good at Crowdfunder about talking about things like this with each other. And I think that really, really helps. Like being a little bit vulnerable, involving other people in your journey, not only just that just help you with your project and lighten the load, which of course is going to just make it a whole lot easier. But I think talking to other people, if you can go and talk to other project owners, that's a really good practical tip, because I think they will probably all tell you that it was really nerve-wracking. There were lots of tricky parts of it, but they'll be able to give you practical tips and just ease your mind as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, I mean, I know I do, everyone can probably think of, a couple of friends or people that they know that are really good at giving them a pep talk. It might be your partner, it might be a parent, a sibling, or just a really good mate. Those ones, people that you can rely on to sort of, get you back on track, and give you a little boost when you need it. And I think that sort of comes into a larger strategy, which is around drawing on things that give you confidence. So if you know that when you're wearing this certain outfit, or if you've got your lucky pair of pants on, or whatever it is, that you're feeling good and like you can take on the world, when you have this thing with you, or when you have your lipstick on, or whatever it is, then go ahead and do that. Those little things definitely make a difference. Sometimes for me, it's like wearing the right pair of shoes makes me feel like, I've got this.
Yeah, definitely. My thing is my hair. I mean, it doesn't look like it now because obviously.
Oh, I don't know if Nicole's frozen or if I've frozen. This is the fun thing about doing things like this while we're in lockdown. So
hello,
she's back.
It happens quite a lot, doesn't it? Talking about anxiety, this is the type of thing you can very easily get anxiety about, isn't it? But it's fine. Yeah. Roll with it. It's fine. I was talking about very important things like my hair. So yeah, like doing my hair, I'm a bit of a Samson in that sense. Like it just makes me feel good. And I think it is really important. Those things are quite superficial, but it just gives you that little bit of confidence, doesn't it?
Definitely. And something else which works for me, and something I definitely recommend to other people as well, is having like little mantras, little phrases that you kind of have in your mind that you can, either look at, write it down, pop it on the wall, save it as your background on your computer. So every time you close down a window, you see it. Or, just something that you sort of remind yourself that sort of gives you that little boost. So one that I've had is you're stronger than you think you are. I think is a good one of reminding me that I know I lack confidence. So remember that you are stronger than you think you are. You can overcome these things. And music as well. That's a really good one.
It is, yeah, and we're going to come back to that, but we've created a bit of a playlist for this workshop, but we'll come back to that. I think a really big theme for this is the fear of failure. It totally makes sense. Like we talked about before, these are big events in our lives, doing something like a crowdfunding campaign. That fear of failure manifests itself in so many different ways. So maybe this is something that I do. I think you're quite similar to me, Sami. We love to plan. Mm-hmm. We love to do lots of research, and that's amazing. However, there is a point where it becomes a barrier, where we're not actually moving forward, and we can plan forever. At some point, we have to say, okay, it's time. We've got to just go. And I think it's that perfectionism that gets in the way sometimes. And I hear project owners say this quite a lot. No, I still need to do this. I still need to do this.
Totally. I'm an over preparer. And I've worked with so many projects that feel the same, that it's very, you'll always find something that you can tweak up and tune. There'll always be something that you just need to get right before you're happy to launch. But a lot of that, can just be sort of procrastination around putting off doing the scary thing, which for most people is putting the project live. People are quite good at, chipping away in the background and building the page. But God, that feeling just before you put your project live is terrifying. I actually had someone sit with me while we did it, because I didn't feel able to do it on my own, which is, I look back and I think that is ridiculous. You're just putting something up on the site, but at the time those feelings are very real. And they're not ridiculous at the time. They feel really, really quite scary.
I can imagine. I haven't done my own project, but I can absolutely imagine. I've done similar things, and it must be absolutely terrifying. You're putting it out there, like everyone's going to see it. You're going to send it to all your friends and family. You've done all this work. You've been thinking about it for years. It must be terrifying. I absolutely get it. So this comes back to something that we've talked about a lot before, which is, this is a test. This is the first step. I heard something a couple of years ago that somebody told me. My friend works at LinkedIn in Silicon Valley, and she said that people are creating new apps. They're doing them all the time. They want to fail quickly and fail often. And I love that. It's like, this isn't the end. There's always the next step. There's always another thing. If this doesn't work, it's not a failure. You learn, you adapt, you try the next thing. Learn, adapt, try the next thing.
I was definitely raised with a little bit of a perfectionism, that it was, showing weakness or failing was a bad thing. Getting a bad grade on a test was like the end of the world. But actually, I think I found it really useful to think sort of a scientist mindset. So if you think about, people developing, amazing medication, treatments for cancer, all of these kind of things. These people are literally failing all day, every day. That's part of the job, is, finding lots of ways, that don't work. And that's actually totally fine. And something I've had to make a switch for as an adult is actually recognizing that failure isn't a terrible thing. It's part of testing things out. If you go through with the attitude that everything you do has to be 100% perfect and successful every time, you'll never get out the door. So it's totally fine. And I think we're so harsh on ourselves, but we really don't show that to others, to the people we love. So if you can think of someone who's maybe had a business or tried to set something up, and it didn't really pan out. It was actually fine. You didn't look at them and go, well, they're an absolute failure. I wouldn't want to be friends with them anymore. They're rubbish. All their ideas are rubbish. We think that people are going to think this of us, or, sometimes as an extreme, we think that. But if you apply that the other way around, you don't think that at all. And I think it's worth putting yourself in their shoes and trying to be less self-critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, people will just be proud of you. They're just proud of you for giving it a go. And I think that comes back to another point that we've talked about, which is there's a lot of nervousness about sending it to friends and family. Like, I hear that one a lot, that friends and family are the ones that people are most nervous about speaking to about it, because I think there's a lot of people that have project ideas and they don't even talk to anyone about it. It just stays in their head, which I totally understand. But actually, the best way to get feedback from people is to just put it out there before you even start. But did you have anything like that, Sami, when you...
Oh my God, And do you know what? I think so much of this is like schoolyard behaviour. I was so almost afraid that people would laugh at me, or people would be, like, what, you don't know anything about that, So there's a bit of background. I have a jewellery business, that I do part-time alongside working with Crowdfunder part-time. And before 2017, I'd never picked up a jewelry hammer in my life. I sort of went on a course, fell in love with it, had no intention of doing a business, but just sort of fell into it as things like that happen. But it was something very private, because I wasn't out on the street with my drill and my work, so no one knew what I was doing. And I had this sense that people wouldn't see me as being this a person capable of that kind of thing, and that they would sort of poo-poo my idea or whatever. So for me, there were certain people that I was really nervous about telling, particularly people that I look up to. So what I did was I started with baby steps and started to talk to the people that I really trust, the people that I knew would kind of support me and wouldn't be mean to me in my very nervous, self-critical view. And slowly that built my confidence. So by the first couple of people that I spoke to were really enthusiastic and actually were really amazing. It gave me that little glow and that little boost where I was like, do you know what, actually, I can do this and it's not silly. And why not? Okay. And then I'd take the leap, and tell someone that I was nervous about it. And the reactions were always good, at least to my face anyway. But it was totally unfounded.
It's that imposter syndrome, isn't it? That why am I the one who can do this? And you start to actually believe it if you keep telling yourself that, when there's nobody else that can do what you do. You are absolutely unique. No one else can do it the way you can do it.
Definitely. I think the imposter syndrome is really interesting, and there's quite a good bit of reading if anyone's interested when we finish here about that, in business and other things, particularly if it's something that you don't really have a lot of history doing. So for me, because it was a total, pivot, I'd never done anything like that before. I felt like it wasn't part of the persona that people knew me as. So it felt like a weird thing to suddenly be like, oh, by the way, I'm also a jeweler now. Like, how about that? So definitely building up that confidence makes all the difference.
Absolutely. So the last couple of months, obviously, has been really tricky for a lot of people, especially a lot of businesses. So at Crowdfunder, for anyone that doesn't know, we've run this Pay It Forward campaign, working with businesses who haven't been able to be open. So coffee shops, bars, anybody who's really struggled because of COVID-19. And the thing that I've heard a lot is that people don't want to look like they're asking for money. Yeah. This has been a real theme. And I think this is probably the same for everyone. But I think especially for a successful business, that must be really hard. Yeah. That must be a really, really tricky one.
I think there's definitely the two sides to it, isn't there? There's the I don't want to seem like I'm begging, I'm putting out my hat and asking people to give me money from a personal perspective. That's one aspect. The other one is, particularly at the moment, there's people who need money so much more than me. There's people who have been affected by some of the terrible things that the COVID-19 crisis has brought about. There's people who don't have jobs, etc., and feeling like, well, my dreams and what I want to do is so small. It's so much less important than all these other things that are going on. And again, what we're finding and what we're seeing from the projects that are coming in as part of Pay It Forward is that that's really not the case. You're small, saving your small coffee shop, or saving your small charity or community group that do these things. People, they're just as essential. People want to support them just as much as these big, punchy projects about, PPE for people in the NHS, because that's the fabric of our communities and our societies that people want to save, that they want to be able to come back to when we're all, back out in the wild again.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a lot of conversations about that last couple of months, but yeah, I thought it was really key to talk about that because, and it does come back to being vulnerable and just Yeah, opening up and being honest with people, and people really respond so well to that. Like you always say this, Sami, like people are kind. We see it every day working here at Crowdfunder. It's amazing the types of things that we see. People just donating on projects, not even wanting a reward, just to help people. Like, yeah.
Well, that's it. It's definitely made me, I think stereotypically, a lot of people at Crowdfunder think I'm very cynical, but actually Crowdfunder has turned me into way more of an optimist than I ever was. People are good people at the heart of it. People will help you and people are kind. And the evidence of that I see, in waves every single day, that people do want to help. And I think the other thing which is quite important, which particularly if you're raising funds for a business project or for something quite personal, is the element of rewards. So this idea that I don't want to be begging, no one wants to feel like they're begging. That's not a good feeling for anyone. But when you consider the fact that through Crowdfunder you offer rewards, it really isn't begging. It's you're offering something in return. It's something that's going to be worthwhile that person wants. So it's absolutely, not begging. They're getting something back. And often the thing that they're getting back is really awesome. And if anything, they're like, thanks for the bargain. Thanks for this awesome thing that I wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. So, the benefit is for them as much as for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a key point. Okay, so let's talk about practical tips, because I think it is really important to have these types of conversations where being a little bit vulnerable, we're talking about everyone's in the same boat, but what can you actually do? So practical tips. Break everything down into parts. We talked about this a little bit. So for instance, if you're thinking of opening a restaurant, then perhaps think about a pop-up and test the water. There's less pressure and it makes business sense too. Like, you don't want to just spend £500,000 opening a restaurant without knowing there is a market there, that you've got everything right. Do a little pop-up.
And it actually makes sense from a strategic crowdfunding point of view as well. A lot of projects that if you go on our site, you look at the explore section and you see these really big, massive projects that have raised tens, hundreds of thousands. If you look, they've normally had a smaller project first, a lot of them. So they'll crowdfund for something just small, maybe just a new bit of kit, or as you say, for a pop-up, just to test the water, learn how crowdfunding works, stretch their crowdfunding legs and really sort of get to grips with it, nail a small one. And then that's given them the confidence. It's also given them the experience to then go and do something bigger.
I think that's really, really key. We talked a little bit already about breaking things down into parts and doing prep, but not too much. So we've got loads of resources on Crowdfunder in the guide section. You should have a look at that. Obviously, doing this webinar helps. But yeah, putting the time into plan. And I would suggest putting in time each week to do it. So you're not just leaving it to the end of the week. So maybe an hour a day. But just don't do it any more than that, because that's when you get into
and I do love a list, and we have a lot of lists and things that you can work through if you have a look on our guides, because it gives you a start and an end, or your list can be never ending. I don't know about you, my DIY list is one of those for my house. It's a never ending list. I keep adding more things to it, and it can be like that with crowdfunding. Do you know what? Write your list, and when you've ticked it off, you're ready to go. No more faffing around.
Someone said to me once, get to 90%. I love that. 90%, because you can always change it. It's fine. You just change it, or you just do another one. It's cool. So getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think we've kind of talked about that quite a lot. Fake it till you make it. Right. So we are kind of on the fence about this one. I think it does help. I do think it does. Like, if you're in a situation like this, which is terrifying, doing an online workshop, it can help to fake it for half an hour. But I think sometimes it's better just to get to the root of it. What's your view on fake it till you make it, Sami?
So I think it works for some people and not for others. And I think the fake it till you make it works really well for me. What we mean by that is fake confidence until you have real confidence. Because if you can turn up into, you know, a conversation, you know, on your crowdfunding video, being confident as hell that your idea is amazing, do you know what? You might convince yourself that you're confident. I think, as you say, if there's a bigger reason why you're not confident, maybe we need to look at that. But if you feel it's really just, you know, in that moment, doing that particular task, or, you know, or dreading clicking send on that email, then do you know what? Channel someone that you know who is confident as hell, that person that you're like, God, I wish I could be as confident as them. Samantha Jones from Sex and the City. She's my girl, okay? So if I'm feeling like I need a little boost, I'm going to put on her shoes. Do you know what? She can do it. What would she do? She'd walk in the room like this. It would be amazing. I can be her for 10 minutes. And after that, maybe I'll be feeling confident enough that I can start feeling that for real.
Yeah. I love the way you actually really, you set up to when you were saying that.
It's total embodiment, and it is.
It has worked for me, definitely. There are times when it's worked for me, 100%. So this is one of my favorites. Now, sometimes when I first say this to people, it makes them feel a bit uncomfortable, and I get it. I totally get it. So have a plan for if it does fail. Already having this in place can help you with that scary feeling. This so works for me. There's always something else you can do afterwards. This is not the be all end all. If it fails, it's fine. You'll learn. And having that next step ready just helps me so much.
I mean, anyone over the age of 30 might remember the Dr. Pepper adverts, like, what's the worst that can happen? It's a great thing to think about. What is the worst that's going to happen? You know, let's actually list it. Let's actually talk about what's the worst that happens if your project fails, and what positives can you take from that?
Yeah, like, because we never actually follow that thought through. You know, when we get the fear, we shut it down. That's what we do. It's totally natural. Human beings, we don't want to feel that uncomfortable feeling, so we shut it down. What's the next thought after that? What is the worst thing that's going to happen? Actually, like Sami says, actually sit there and write it down. What is the worst thing? And every single time you'll come back to, no, it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's actually fine. It's actually fine. There's always another option. You know, there's always other things that you can do. It's never the end, never. There's a famous story of a big American crowdfunding project from a few years ago that really, I think, sort of embodies this. They had a project initially that was a total flop, raised no money for this product. It's essentially a beer cooler. Stay with me. A couple of years later, it might have even been a year later, they tweaked the product slightly and they raised millions. Obviously, slightly different kettle of fish because this is a big sort of American platform. But it shows what they learned from failing was that actually we hadn't got things quite right. So if we hadn't crowdfunded this and we just made the product and stuck it on the shelves, might have not really been a big seller. Tweaked a few things, made it better, and now they've, you know, did incredibly. So there's really nothing wrong. The crowd is a great, you know, testing circuit, a great way of finding out what can I tweak, what can I do slightly different, what would make my product, my idea, my community group, my event, what would make it even better.
Yeah, like it used to be the case that the only option you'd have is to go to the bank and get a massive loan, and you don't have to do that with crowdfunding. You know, like you say, it's just you just test it, see what happens. You don't lose anything.
Totally. And when I was crowdfunding as well, what it taught me from the rewards that people selected, these were the first sales I was really making. I found out what people go for, you know, and what size rings were most people. I didn't know how many I should make of each size. You know, when I'm making stock, I've no idea how big everyone's hands are. I've got tiny hands. No one has hands this small apart from children. So it was really useful just, you know, to get an insight into my customers and what people were interested in. You know, it's one thing to ask people, it's another thing for them to put their money where their mouth is and actually, you know, make a pledge on a particular thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that just reminds me of, so before I started working at Crowdfunder, I was a buyer on the high street. So we would buy 500,000 of a pair of trousers, and we just had to buy them. Like, we had no idea, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Don't know. Just get them in and see what happens. When you're crowdfunding, it's the exact opposite situation. Like you said, Sam, you can test it.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so I guess a lot of people talk about mental health and things like that now. So I think we know a lot of this, but definitely planning in those times, especially when you're running your campaign, to do things that make you feel grounded. So whatever your thing is, maybe it's running, yoga, meditation, just planning in that time.
And I think it is really a roller coaster in that, yeah, you definitely want to plan some time to relax, or you know, it is addictive. It becomes really like a really tense time where you're crowdfunding. But the other thing that comes with that I found was having a lot of excess adrenaline. So after I got, you know, a big pledge, or I'd have a really good day, you find yourself doing that like happy dance, and you're still really fired up, but then you're sat at the computer, but you're really fired up and you're full of adrenaline. So find some ways to burn off that adrenaline, whether it's, you know, going out for a run, or, as I've been doing, going for a swim in the sea, because that will tire me out instantly. You know, do some things to burn off that adrenaline, or you'll find yourself operating all the way up here, you know, for a few weeks, and it's totally exhausting, totally exhausting. But it's also one of the best times that you'll have. And the feedback is, and I totally echo this, is it was a roller coaster. Parts of it were really hard. Would I do it again? In a blink of an eye, absolutely.
Oh, fab. I think that's everything, Sami. Is that everything about?
One thing I wanted to mention that we sort of alluded to earlier is I actually made a playlist, which, warning, is mostly terrible, cheesy songs.
So cheesy.
But this is a few songs that we've sort of asked around the team that people find give them a little boost, a little confidence boost, make them feel like they can take on the world. So we're going to share the link to that playlist in the chat feed. So please feel free to click on it, see if there's any songs in there that give you a little get up and go. And maybe we'll publish it more publicly. We'll see. Depends what you guys think of it. Feel free to let us know.
Really good. I played it the other day, and it's really good. It's funny.
I played it the other day as well, actually.
It's funny how music can have such an impact on you, isn't it? Just one song, and you're like, okay, I could do this. I've got it. I'm not sure if we've got any questions. I think our crowdfunder elf, who is Bertie today, has been all over them. I'm not sure if we've got any more to come through.
Yeah, just hang on, just in case any have come in.
I just saw one from Peter, which Bertie has answered. If my crowdfunder fails completely, can I come back and have another go? Yes, please do.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do as many as you like. Oh, we have got questions. Goodness. Just sent them all to us.
Let's have a look. Oh, yeah. So the first one's from Loretta. Do people only crowdfund to start a project, or is it feasible to use it to sustain a community, charity, organisation? Yeah,
so both, you know, definitely both. Obviously, depending on what your individual objectives are, what your goals are, it will vary. What I can say is that if you can be quite specific around what the money is going to enable you to do or keep doing, that tends to resonate with people quite strongly. People like it a simple formula, a simple equation. If I contribute to this, then this will happen. So if I contribute to this, it's business as normal, is less impactful, as if, you know, if you can say, if you contribute to this, then there'll be these outcomes. So try and, you know, put some walls around it and make it into something specific. But absolutely, people crowdfund to sustain organizations all the time.
It makes it more marketable, doesn't it? And something that's a clear idea of what people are backing. And then a question from Helen. Thanks, Helen, for your question. I suppose also, what is the way we approach and word it to friends and relatives, enlisting their help is the way to go?
Yeah, and this is actually a tactic that I used. I found that I desperately wanted to ask for people's opinions on my page, on things as I was pulling together, so that I could do my best of over planning, over preparing, and making sure that everyone had seen it and had a view on it, so I could make it as good as possible. What I actually found along the way was that all those people that read through my description for me or helped me out with various bits and bobs, they were all super keen to help and to hear how things were going later on down the line. So kind of enlisting their help, getting people just to give you a little opinion, just to read something. They become quite invested in it as well, which is really nice to have a little support network around you. So you do feel like, these people have got your back.
Yeah, I think getting people involved as early as possible is one of our key pieces of advice that we give anyone anyway, isn't it? We always say that, because as soon as you get them invested at the beginning, they will shout about it for you. And so I would even be quite sneaky and get people involved when you don't even need to sometimes. I think that's quite a good tip, just like, oh, can you help me with this? And then they are invested in your project. They're going to help you.
Yeah, and there's no such thing as having enough people have a look and give you feedback, because everyone has such a different view. I sent it out to before I went live, a few friends that I know are really different, and they all had different comments, and it was really great to then take all of that on board and try and make sure that it was something for everyone, that it was all covered.
So then Matt's got a question about timing around COVID-19. So his project is not COVID-19 related. So he's concerned about the timing and putting it live in a few weeks' time. So we do have projects that are not COVID-19 related at the moment, don't we, Sami?
I mean, lots of them. Lots. We've done a good few £1 million since the start of lockdown. With projects that are nothing to do with COVID.
We've got people starting businesses from scratch. We've got all sorts going on. So I think as long as there still is the market there, and we know there are people, I know that obviously there are a lot of people struggling out there, but there are a lot of people that do still, they are in their jobs still. There are people who are very much willing to.
I mean, I think if you think about your own behaviour and the kind of things that you're still doing, I'm still, I've got to go to the pet shop in a minute to get some more treats for my dog. Life hasn't stopped. I've still got to do all the normal things that I'd have to do ordinarily. So yeah, I would say there's absolutely no reason why not.
Absolutely. And then this is a really interesting question from Ray. We're an organisation run by people suffering from agoraphobia, and due to the lockdown, have myself been alone. Am I still allowed to get involved in crowdfunding? Absolutely, Ray. We would absolutely love for you to be crowdfunding for that project.
I think what I think we've all been learning is how to work better in teams whilst actually being apart. I know you and I, Nicole, haven't been in the same room since February. But, it doesn't stop us from, working together. It's a really tough time, all sorts of implications from a mental health perspective of the lockdown and the wider sort of crisis. So I would say it's definitely worth making the most of some of the really brilliant tools that are available to try and stay in touch with people, even if we can't physically be near each other if we're still in our homes.
And I think like you say, Sami, we've actually got so much better at that the last few months than we've ever been before. There's so much out there for you.
It used to be that Zoom was a very niche thing. Now everyone's heard of Zoom. Zooming is a thing now.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and my parents are all over the FaceTime, they're on the Zoom, they're asking me about Teams, Google Hangouts. Suddenly, everyone knows everything about these different tools. It's great. It's really revolutionized, I think, the concept of working together and teamwork.
Absolutely. And then I think our last question from Lee, when asked if we are registered, what's that mean? As we're a mutual society, but registered with the Home Office and national bodies, etc.
So I think you're talking about in the when you're setting up a project on Crowdfunder. So there are various different options essentially of what you can say that you are either a business, charity, organization, registered or unregistered. So what that's really looking for is a registration number. So whether that's with, as you say, the Charities Commission, or whether that's with Companies House, if you have a registration number, then that would normally be the question that we're asking. I do understand it. It's a tricky term because registered, can mean all sorts of things. But yeah, if you have a number of that is your registration number, then that's normally the one that we're talking about. If you do get stuck, we have an amazing, lovely, friendly support team who are really excellent. They're all superstars, and you can reach them. I think we posted the email address, but it's just support@crowdfunder.co.uk, and they can always help on any questions like that.
Oh, they are so amazing. They really are, especially like everyone, they've been working from home. It's amazing.
They know everything as well. They know everything about everything.
I post them all the time. They know everything. I think that's it, Sami. I think that's all we've got time for, really.
Brilliant.
We've got, I don't think we've had any other questions. I think Bertie's been beavering away in the background, answering lots of them for us. Bertie popped a little link there to our guides and to our new Crowdfunder course earlier, which is really exciting.
It's so new. It came out yesterday.
Yeah.
So new.
So please do follow those links if you're starting to think, okay, maybe I do have a bit more confidence to do this, then that would be the next step.
And we'd definitely love to hear any of your stories, any of your mantras, any of your confidence boosting songs. If you tag us on Twitter or on Facebook, we're always about keeping an eye. Let us know how you're getting on. We'd love to hear about it. We are definitely all in the same boat. I've been there, and I'm thinking about crowdfunding again, actually, in the future. So any experiences that you can share will always help other people, because everyone is going through the same thing.
Absolutely. And I'll be sending around an email after this with a replay, and I'll put the link to that course as well in there. So thank you so much for your time, everyone, today. I hope you have a good day, and take care.